It's Tuesday, May 5th, 2026. The Supreme Court makes a bad choice. A very new and specific fear unlocked in South Africa. And could Ohio be the next battleground on massive fraud? Next on the AM Update. It's starting to go hot once again in the Middle East as Iran launched its first drone and missile attack since the start of the ceasefire in early April with the United States. According to the United Arab Emirates and their authorities, fired 2 drones at a ship in the Strait of Hormuz. U.S. military also said 2 commercial vessels that were U.S. flagged actually passed through the Strait of Hormuz unharmed and safely on their way. That's under the new Project Freedom initiative announced by President Trump. The Iranian regime says it received a U.S. response to its latest 14-point peace proposal, which it said is aimed at ending the war, not extending the current ceasefire. Trump said over the weekend, as you heard yesterday, he'd likely reject the deal. So maybe starting to get hot again as Iran, by some reports, actually was able to hit the United Arab Emirates as well. You have to think that the UAE is starting to get on their last nerves. That Project Freedom initiative by President Trump that he announced the other day, he's couching that as a humanitarian mission. Here he is at the White House yesterday.
This is great, but if you don't have the platform, meaning the country, meaning the right principles, the right everything, our country's booming now, despite the fact that we're in I call it a mini war, because that's all they are. They don't have a Navy anymore. Think of it. They had 159 ships. How many do they have left, Kelly? Out of 159, take a guess. She's very smart. 0. 159 ships. In the first 2 weeks, 159.
So for about the 159th time over the last 6 weeks or so, we are being told that Iran's military has been destroyed. And I think that's largely true. It's just those nuisance fast boats that they've got running on the Strait of Hormuz really causing this thing to gum up and grind on. Back at home, U.S. Supreme Court temporarily blocked an appeals court ruling that sought to pause a federal policy permitting mifepristone, sometimes called the baby killing pill or the abortion pill, to be dispensed through the mail. An administrative stay issued by Justice Samuel Alito blocked a May 1st temporary injunction issued by the 5th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals until at least 5 p.m. on May 11th. Alito directed the state of Louisiana, which is where this all stems from, to respond by May 7th. The stay, in effect, restores permission for the drug's distribution by mail. Basically turns this mifepristone drug, turns every single mailbox into a baby-killing facility. Previously, the 5th Circuit had granted May 1st's Louisiana's request to temporarily pause the Food and Drug Administration's policy permitting mifepristone, a drug commonly, but not always exclusively, but it's almost exclusively used for aborting babies up to 10 weeks gestation. That FDA measure allowed that to be mailed into the state, despite the state's laws, Louisiana's laws, restricting baby killing. Danco Laboratories, one of the pharmaceutical companies that manufactures the drug, promptly appealed the U.S. Supreme Court, asking it to block that injunction. Now the Supreme Court, after a previous or a lower court had said, yes, you can block the abortifacient from being dispensed by mail. Lower court said, yes, stop doing that. Now the Supreme Court says, no, you can do that again while this thing plays out. So that is the main battle line right now. That's the main battlefield, I think, at least in terms of raw numbers in the fight for life, is this baby-killing drug that can just be sent to any mailbox all over the country. It's just heartbreaking again. One thing that I would love to hear more from, maybe the Pope of the Catholic Church, a little bit more from, is the fight for life. Unfortunately, he's busy doing things like making a former illegal alien a bishop of West Virginia. A large Roman Catholic diocese is pushing back at criticism after Pope Leo appointed a former illegal alien as a bishop amid heightened tensions between Vatican and Washington. Leo nominated Bishop Evelio Menjivar-Ayala as bishop as the Diocese of Wheeling-Charleston, which covers all of West Virginia. Menjivar-Ayala originally arrived in San Ysidro, California, smuggled in a car trunk after making several prior attempts as a teenager to flee guerrilla war-torn El Salvador. He did receive his citizenship after being ordained into his ministry back in 2004. It came a couple of years after he was ordained. So there again, Pope Leo, I just think the guy is an op, just a total op. And it's unfortunate because vociferous, strong disagreements, obviously, that I have as an evangelical Christian with Catholicism. It would be very, very helpful to have somebody with a very high pedestal and the moral authority with a lot of this planet to actually, work on behalf of biblical morals. But instead, we get stuff like this over and over and over again, seemingly. Check out this little tidbit. The judge overseeing the trial, or at least where we are in that process, the prosecution of the latest would-be Trump assassin, the judge in that legal proceeding is apologizing. Magistrate Judge Zia Faruqui said that he was fascinated and disturbed by Cole Allen's treatment in jail. Allen was placed on suicide watch when he was first imprisoned. Prosecutors argued that since Allen did not, or told investigators he didn't expect to survive the alleged attack, he could be a danger to himself. An incredulous Judge Faruqui wasn't convinced by that argument, drawing comparisons between Cole Allen and defendants arrested for rioting at the Capitol during those events on January 6th of 2021. He said, quote, this is the judge speaking, "To me, it's extremely disturbing that he was put in 5-point restraints to a person with no criminal history, except for that time that he tried to take out the entire Trump administration. It's troubling," the judge goes on. "I've never heard of one January 6th defendant who was put in 5-point restraints or in a safe cell. The only way to keep him safe is the most punitive thing. That's a problem. At a minimum, it should be apologizing to him. Mr. Allen, I'm sorry that things have not been the way that they are supposed to." We're never allowed as Christians to just completely give up hope that justice will be served. We haven't even gotten into the meats. Of this legal proceeding, whatever you want to call it at this point, against the latest would-be Trump assassin. We haven't even gotten to the meat of this, and the judge is already apologizing to the alleged assassin. Let's just say I'm skeptical that justice will be served here. Not hopeless, but skeptical. Let's go to this real quick before the break. This is Minnesota Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan as part of Bernie Sanders' Fight Oligarchy tour stop in the state of Minnesota. Here she is talking about the Laken Riley Act.
The very first vote in the second Trump administration that he brought forward was for the Laken Riley Act. It was one of his biggest priorities.
Booing the Laken Riley Act.
It stripped due process away from immigrants, allowed for the indefinite detention of adults and children, and was the green light to give ICE unprecedented power to totally terrorize our communities. And I want to be clear that there is a straight line from the Laken Riley Act vote to what we saw in the streets of our communities.
Minnesota Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan bringing up the Laken Riley Act, decrying the Laken Riley Act. And you heard her band of left-wingers there in the Gopher State booing the Laken Riley Act, named after a young lady, a college student, murdered by an illegal alien who had a prior arrest for shoplifting. The Laken Riley Act, among other things, but the main provision of the Laken Riley Act is that those illegals who are caught stealing, engaging in theft, this is federal law now, those who have entered the country illegally, caught stealing, engaging in theft, they have to be deported. That's all the law does, basically. And in that room, you heard those leftists booing that. That is about the most common sense thing you could probably think of when it comes to immigration policy. That's how far gone one party is. Incredible. Maybe Pope Leo can help them with their messaging. When we come back, a very new and specific fear unlocked. I saw this story out of South Africa. Also, is Ohio going to be the new front lines in the battle against raging fraud? We'll talk about that and more coming up next. I unlocked a new fear when I saw this video out of South Africa. Now, it's a very sad story. I don't want to diminish that at all. But here it is. The remains of a missing South African hotel boss have been found inside a swollen 15-foot crocodile after it was airlifted in a daring operation. Gabriel Batista, 59 years old, is believed to have been snapped up in the croc-infested Komati River when he was swept away in raging floodwaters last week. Rescue crews spent days tracking the suspected man-eater before killing it in a desperate attempt to recover the businessman's remains. An insane video captured the massive reptile being hoisted from the river via a harness after police commander was dropped down to retrieve the carnivore, said to weigh more than 1,000 pounds. When the authorities eventually sliced open the croc's grotesquely swollen belly, they discovered 2 severed arms, half a rib cage, and chunks of flesh. A ring believed to belong to the victim was found on one of the fingers, according to officials. So that is my new, and I mean, obviously, heartbreaking for his family and those who loved him, those who worked for him. I don't know, maybe he was a really bad guy. Maybe a bunch of his employees maybe wished he would have gotten eaten by crocodiles. Nevertheless, no. It's a sad story. You feel for his family. That's just a gruesome way to go. I've never heard of that before, though. Like, you are loosely aware alligators, crocodiles, particularly the bigger ones, they're dangerous. They're dangerous. You don't want to be around them. But the specificity of this new fear that has been unlocked for me, and maybe for you now, too, you're welcome. Getting washed away in a flood. This guy was trying to drive his truck over floodwaters, getting washed away in a flood. That's horrifying in and of itself. You're completely out of control. It's still unclear whether that killed him or the croc did. But perhaps maybe the last thing that you remember as you just go through the horrifying experience of being completely out of control, washed away in a flood, is the twisting of your leg or other appendage by a large crocodile about to eat you. I didn't know I had that fear, that phobia. Now I do. Let's go to this. Luke Rosiak, an incredible reporter for the Daily Wire. He has his latest expose. You should go and read the entire thing at the Daily Wire. He also has the entire article posted on his X account at Luke Rosiak. That's R-O-Z or R-O-S IAK. I'm just going to read this Twitter thread that he put together. You should go read the full article. Listen to this. It's a picture of an office building, a very nondescript office building. Luke writes, 94 Medicaid home health companies purport to occupy this office building, taking more than $66 million of your money. They provide free butlers to immigrants. No windows on the outside hides the fact that there's no one on the inside. There's an entire street of these office buildings. Luke goes on, Ohio now spends $1 billion a year on home health, mostly personal services like housekeeping. This includes people getting paid to provide, quote, companionship and conversation to their own relatives. Fraud is almost impossible to prove because service happens in private houses. Home health was supposed to save money because it's cheaper than being in a nursing home. Problem is, no one fakes their way into a nursing home, but lots of people will claim to be sick if they get to stay home and get free checks for their family. Almost all are run by Africans, who I am certain, Luke Rosiak writes, the government is not properly monitoring because our system isn't set up to track people who all share combinations of just a few names and don't have birth dates. Here's some companies in the building that of the picture that Luke posted. AAU Home Health Care, run by Silo Mansare, $12.1 million. LA Home Health Care Incorporated, run by Liban Muhammad, $8.2 million. Midwest Home Health Care Mohammed Hussein, $8.2 million. Lark Residential Support Incorporated, all of these in Ohio. Yovita Lark, Union First Care, Abdul Sise, $5.8 million. Vision One Incorporated, Abdallah Kitwara, $5.5 million. Luke concludes by saying the government wasn't capable of figuring out or didn't care about numerous characters Daily Wire will introduce this week, like an accountant who lost his license for stealing public funds and opened a $7 million Medicaid business using the address of a convicted money launderer's teenage son. This is happening in a red state. Go read the full report from Luke Rosiak at the Daily Wire. Also has an article for free up on X as well. The more I hear stories like this, I thought for sure, I've heard it posited before, that if we just took care of the fraud and waste in our system, the government maybe wouldn't be completely solvent, but it would be within a breath of being solvent. Because right now it's insolvent. It's not. That's why you have to print so much money. I didn't think that position was really maybe based in reality. I didn't think there was that much fraud, but the more stories come out like this, and if you're... Listen, not all cultures are equal. Not all cultures are equal. If you're coming from a culture that has low value on honesty, on trust, on honor, if there's an easy way to get millions of dollars from a government, why wouldn't you engage in fraud? Again, if you're coming from a culture, you're not a Christian, you're not a believer, you're coming from a culture that does not place high value on these uniquely Christian notions, you'd be a dummy not to commit fraud. Problem is, those of us who cannot live like this, engage in fraud like this, because we know better, by the grace of God, we can't continue to subsidize this. When I say can't, it's not that we won't, it's that we cannot. It's not physically possible. Luke Rosiak, great investigative reporter over at the Daily Wire. Thank you for that story, Luke. A couple of quick items here. It is now officially official. Florida has redistricted, if that's even a word. Governor Ron DeSantis made that announcement yesterday. Ken Cuccinelli, former Virginia gubernatorial candidate, he's been around the block for another number of... Actually, I think he was gubernatorial candidate. I think he was maybe lieutenant governor or attorney general of Virginia as well. He came out with analysis yesterday, and he says that the Virginia Supreme Court, he thinks it's likely that they do not allow the redistricting in favor of Democrats to happen in Virginia. So a couple quick redistricting updates as well. Quickly, air analysis, slightly acidic, mostly necessary. I want to talk about this very quickly. Several people sent this to me. 60 Minutes did an expose on something they dubbed, with the help of some left-wing organization, disaster tourism. It was really a hit piece, if you want to call it that, an expose, if you want to call it that, whatever you want to call it. It was a story about how some, what they would call white nationalist fascist groups of young men, how they're basically playing disaster tourism. And how they're doing this, CBS News 60 Minutes explains, how they're doing this is that when there are disasters like the hurricane that went through the southeast in Appalachia, they will go in there and they will help people. And then they will post videos of themselves helping people, post photographs of themselves giving water to people in need, and that makes them look better. And again, CBS News couched this. I think Patriot Front was mentioned. Another couple of groups I've never heard of were mentioned. They actually interviewed a guy from one of these other groups that they couched as white nationalist fascist. This guy said, yeah, I am a white nationalist. I just care about white people and I'm helping them. This is how we help. And yeah, we do this to make ourselves look better. Never heard of these organizations before, except for Patriot Front, which I think is a front for something else. So what do we do with that? I know people are watching this or care about it because several people sent it to me. Number one, I think if they are legitimately going, I don't really care who it is, what their motivations are necessarily. If they are going in and legitimately, like actually helping people, cutting up trees, getting roadways free, going on rescue operations, distributing water or food to people who really need it. And they're doing, and again, I'm giving you a lot of qualifiers here because need to be very specific here. If they're even doing it in conjunction with or being very careful not to drain additional resources from the county or municipality, I don't really care who's doing the humanitarian work. It's humanitarian. Now, I can also say at the same time, once you are done with your mission in Appalachia, helping those people dig out, I really hope that you reevaluate whatever it is, whatever brand of Christianity you think you possess. Really reevaluate what the second greatest commandment is, to love your neighbor as you love yourself. Evaluate that. Maybe stop being an incel and stop masquerading as some sort of paragon of masculinity, dressed up as some sort of white supremacy thing. I can say both of those things at the same time. The object, ironically, of CBS News' 60 Minutes report is that they were trying to make these groups look really bad. And they were trying to essentially make the point is, hey, their humanitarian work doesn't matter because they're bad. And they're just doing, their motivations are bad. It might be true that their motivations are wrong. It might be true that they are just bad people. But in the midst of disaster, if it's true that they are truly helping people, 60 Minutes, you're running the risk of actually doing their job, their stated purpose for them by running this piece and giving them even more publicity. You're doing what they were intending to do for them. So, that 60 Minutes piece, it's about 13 minutes long. Not going to play the whole thing or any of it, since I think I basically summed it up for you. Yeah, I don't really care what your motivations are if you are truly helping people and not being a drain on resources, that are already spread thin in times of natural disaster. If you're truly doing humanitarian work, I don't really care what your motivations are, what your background is. But I'm also going to say at the same time, I hope you find Jesus and stop doing dress up as KKK, white supremacists, whatever you want to say. That's going to do it for a Tuesday. Back at it again tomorrow. I'm Aaron McIntire, and this is the AM Update.